So Ritual was asked how his podcast got so successful. And he said, we published an episode every week for 6 years, which is how I decided I couldn't take a week off after 13 episodes. So here we are. Welcome to In Linky Land, Ask Me Anything. My name is Tony Albrecht, and this is a podcast about the power of creating and connecting on LinkedIn. I I really was going to take a week off, which is kind of peculiar in podcasting. I mean, why? You kind of record these whenever you want and you put them up whenever you want. You can schedule the recordings, and God knows I've asked too many people to do it, and they've all been so gracious that I've now got this backlog of people who are waiting, hopefully patiently. I'm so sorry if you're if you're in this position. I'm so sorry. Um, but I've made it a point to try to keep the gap between when we record an episode and when we post it to less than 2 weeks. I try to keep it to about 10 days if I can help it. And it's caused this little bit of an issue where I mean, I almost feel like I need to be recording more than one of these a week. Obviously, the world needs more than one of these a week, right? But anyway, so I was going to take this week off and then saw that bit about the Rich Roll podcast, which is a delightful pod. If you haven't, I mean, he is not unlike myself, a former lawyer and recovering alcoholic who likes running. I mean, my distance running is absolutely nothing compared to this guy's. This guy's a super Iron Man, but who left the law to do more creative stuff. And I've been really inspired by that guy. And this year, and when I saw what he said, I was like, oh God, all right, fine. So last week, I'm recording this on the 27th from an Airbnb in outside Toledo, Ohio, where my family and I are on our way back to Ontario from visiting my family in St. Louis for the holiday, which was lovely. And I had posted saying, hey, anybody have any questions? And please throw them out here, because if you don't, I'm just going to do jokes for 45 minutes. And people were gracious enough where we got about 30 questions, which is fantastic. I'm gonna try to bang through a bunch of them here. We'll see how it goes. So thank you to everybody who did that, including, of course, Sam Browne, whose question was, who is your favorite LinkedIn friend and why is it me? I'm not going to dignify that one with a response, but I am going to dignify a lot of other ones with responses. I'm grateful for for the time, and this podcast has been a lot of fun. I've been learning a ton about LinkedIn this year, about entrepreneurship, about personal branding, about podcasting, about self-publishing, about marketing. I mean, this year for me, it's now been a little more than 14 months since I stopped litigating, and it has been easily the most creative year of my life. This podcast being one example, but let's get into it, shall we? With some questions. All right. The first one comes from Erik Duncan, lovely fellow, who asked, why did you pick LinkedIn for a platform versus other options? I fell into LinkedIn, as I said, when I got out of law. I took a business development role with a nonprofit consulting agency called Mission Matters Group, where a buddy of mine and I hatched a plan to work together Um, and Josh Aranda, when we were talking about, one of the things he told me was you need to learn how to do LinkedIn. So that is why I started on LinkedIn. I had dabbled in Instagram and Facebook. I had tweeted maybe 3 times in my entire life. And before October of last year, I had never posted a meaningful word on LinkedIn. So that has all been brand new to me. But yeah, it's not a it's not a very sexy answer, is it, Eric? But it's a true one. Um, a Izzy Prior, fantastic creator out of the UK, um, asked, "Did you initially niche for attorneys or ghostwrite for anyone when you started your business?" Now, this jumps ahead from when I started posting in pretty much November of 2021. I started posting daily in January. Um, and then I started Contender basically on Halloween. I went all in building this agency that helps attorneys and law firms leverage LinkedIn through ghostwriting and LinkedIn strategy coaching. Um, I had gotten pulled in on a single ghostwriting contract with Uplink Marketing, which is run by Evan Chastain, who is a LinkedIn connection who's become a friend. I kind of helped him improve his content game maybe 9 months ago or so. And he got a ghostwriting client, and he asked if I'd be interested in doing some writing on that account. And this was for somebody in the construction industry. Um, I hadn't done anything like that, and sure, I'll give it a shot. And we had some good luck immediately, and that caught my attention of kind of how I enjoyed writing the posts for this guy, and we were able to help him get more attention. And it, oh, good, 2 Sam Browne references in the first 10 minutes. Sam had been in my ear saying, "You should start doing that for lawyers," and I was resistant to the idea, mainly because I had a couple other things I was kind of really interested in pursuing. But then I thought about it more and just said, okay, I'll take a crack at least dropping some lines to some lawyers I know from, my 12 years as a practicing attorney. And sure enough, one of the guys I messaged um, said, have a call with my marketing coordinator. I did, and we scheduled a call with him, and he was up for giving it a shot. And we started working together in October, and same sort of deal. It's gone really well for him and for an associate of his. And once that started going well, some wheels started turning very quickly. And, you know, my CEO at MMG, Josh, who's also a good friend, is he helped talk me off the cliff to going all in on seeing what I can build around this idea. We'll touch on this stuff more later on, but all that to say, I know there are a lot of people who are thinking about ghostwriting or thinking about copywriting and using LinkedIn, and I'm nothing if not an example of the opportunity. And like, if you can show up and, I would say, get good at the content game, um, there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of niches out there where there are going to be more and more businesses and more professionals looking to get more attention, and they're going to need a lot of help. So if you're able to learn how to play the game and write an effective post, there's going to be a ton of opportunity. So I had the built-in advantage of having practiced law, which made that niche just obvious, right? In a way that there just aren't many other attorneys who are trying to do what I'm trying to do in a way that is really nice. Um, and I think even if you haven't done a particular job, I think there's probably value in picking an industry, saying, I ghostwrite for accountants, I ghostwrite for financial advisors, like Anthony Carlton is doing, um, and just zeroing in on that group in a way that, you know, that the argument against doing that is that, well, don't you turn off all the other people? Yeah, maybe, but more importantly, you stand out to somebody, that you're more likely to cut through the noise in a way that somebody can see you and say, oh, that person does something that I need or that I want. And it's that cutting through the noise that I think makes niching a really good idea. Um, Here's a question from, well, actually, a two-parter. One from Eva Rose Daniel and a second from Travis Hinkle. Eva, well, both who have been on episodes of In Linking Land, Small World. Eva said, what were the biggest mistakes you made on LinkedIn since you started posting? And Travis said, what would you have done the same? Um, Biggest mistakes. One thing I'll say is I think I should have been posting more often. And this is something I'm going to be playing around with more in 2023. But I mean, I've posted more than 300 times this year. So it's not like the platform is hurting for content from me. But I've been getting a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk in my ear. And I've also been hearing people like Matt Barker and Darren McKee and Augusto Rosso and um, people who have not just posted consistently, but then experimented with posting more than once a day. And every one of them says that they see positives, that their engagement, their followings uh, go up dramatically once they start doing that. So I don't know if that would have been a mistake. Um, and that may be too strong a word to describe that, but um, another mistake when I first started was dropping DMs to like pretty big creators in that way of sort of like, hey, can I pick your brain? Or hey, will you answer this question for me? Not realizing that somebody with a sizable following is probably getting like 30 of those a day, just a totally unsustainable amount. So it took me a little bit to figure out that I shouldn't. Don't do that. Just, I mean, it's just not cool. You want to start by engaging in people's comments and try to get on their radar that way, in a way that you build a little bit of rapport before you try to take it to one-on-one. Otherwise, it's just a a friendly form of a pitch slap. Um, Travis asked, "What would I have done the same?" Uh, I think I first posted about my strategy in January, which was be consistent, be interesting, be generous. I think that has served me extremely well. And I didn't make that up, really. I mean, that's me pulling from, you know, creatives from time immemorial and from some really experienced people around here who know how to play the game. Um, but the generosity piece, the piece of giving your time and giving your attention, is how you go from the platform being this boring, buttoned up thing where we're all kind of scared to engage, scared to post, and can turn into this dynamic, nourishing, dare I say, exciting place where not only are you able to create content, you're able to build a following, you're able to grow an audience, you're able to make friends, meet collaborators, meet business partners, meet clients. Um, the dynamics of this platform are such that it really is true that what you give can come back to you many times over. And frankly, that's one of the reasons I started this podcast is um, I expected that I give you a podcast and then you will give me 10 podcasts. Is that how that works? Right? Huh. Mm. Quick break to take a sip of Trader Joe's sparkling lime water. We're not sponsored by Trader Joe's. I wish we were. Yong-Soo Chung asked a couple sort of related questions. What surprising benefits have you had being a creator that you didn't expect? And what were challenges you didn't anticipate? Take these in reverse order. A challenge I did not anticipate when I started was how this place just becomes a time suck. And I love LinkedIn. I love spending time engaging with folks. All y'all out here. I really do love it. Um, it can just take so much time. Is when you start, or when I started, I had like, I would say, a crew of about 12 folks who I was in, who I considered pretty tight, that we were helping each other out along the way. And what I didn't realize was as you grow, most of those 12 are still around. A couple of them have kind of gotten busy doing other things, but they're still around. And I still want to be giving them my time and my attention and my brilliant, brilliant comments. But in January, I had 1,000 followers, and now I'm at I'm over 6 at this point, and I've added all these other fantastic people to my network. Um, but the amount of time has remained depressingly consistent. I mean, I haven't gotten any additional time to go along with all these other people. Um, and it really is a pain in the ass, not to have all the, but to want to kind of bounce around commenting. And I see people like Brian Segray, who is absolutely everywhere. Um, Zineb Layachi, another person. I mean, both these people, again, Linky Land folks, they're everywhere. And I just don't know how they do it. It's so like that challenge of managing time has been a huge issue for me, and one, to be honest with you, I still haven't found a graceful uh, solution to yet. What surprising benefit? Look, man, this is all a surprising benefit, all of this. When I started in November, I had very low expectations. Um, I started posting about creativity because I did Justin Welsh's operating system, which I recommend. Um, and he was talking about niching, and there was something about, talk about stuff you can talk about all day long. And I've been studying creativity for years. My sister and I have a virtual community around creativity and supporting one another on creative projects. So I can do that. So I started doing that. Um, but my goal was to get in front of nonprofit leaders in a way that when I sent them direct messages asking for meetings, I was more likely to get the meeting or at least get a response. And it worked for that. It was really effective for that. But all this other stuff where, um, I mean, the fact that this podcast exists, the fact that my other podcast, Unrationed, that I do with the aforementioned Josh and Evan, it's attached to a different project called The Wilds in the Woods around healthy masculinity. That project has only started because of stuff we got into through LinkedIn. Contender Creative, the business that I wish I would have started a decade ago. It only exists because of LinkedIn. I climbed a mountain in Colorado for my 40th birthday and released a book on my birthday. Um, I don't think either of those things happens without LinkedIn. I mean, it's crazy to me. Is I've never really been a social media guy. It's crazy to me that I mentioned this being the most creative year of my life. It's crazy to me that so much of the creativity has been funneled through and sort of built on this platform. Like that's all surprising to me. It's crazy. I mean, it all is. Um, a a related question. Um, from Tania Bhattacharryya, a nonprofit consultant out of California. Lovely person. Hey, Tanya. Given what I just said about how much I'm relying on LinkedIn, and here we are on this podcast talking about LinkedIn, what are your thoughts on having a contingency plan on another platform in case LinkedIn goes poof? Um, this problem, and it is a real concern, became more acute for me when I got suspended for the first time a couple weeks ago. It was only for about 2 hours. And it's a surprisingly common occurrence where people just get suspended um, for bot like activity, saying you've been looking at too many profiles or we think you're using um, scheduling tools or whatever. Um, like I don't really. I mean, I have Shield, and I don't really use Buffer or any other sort of scheduling tools. I wasn't behaving all that differently than I'd been behaving other ways. Um, and it's a really common story. And that problem of what would you do if, or I mean, LinkedIn going poof is pretty unlikely, right? It seems, although with what watching what might be Twitter imploding, I guess, yeah, things can get ugly in a hurry. Or the uncertainty around TikTok, given um, the Congress may have maybe agreeing that the Chinese ownership is a real problem, where either the app needs to be banned or Americanized. Um, so it it's not out of the realm of possibility that LinkedIn could go away, but more likely it's that what if you are sent away from LinkedIn? You are sent into exile. Um, I'm going to be leaning into YouTube in 2023, um, continuing to build. Yeah, I think of them as projects, but there is a personal branding component to it where I continue to think of myself as a student of creativity and an evangelist for the transformational power of creativity. And I'm going to keep doing that. And by standing on that corner of the internet, as I like to say, I'm able to point to whatever I'm working on and call that an example of demonstrating the power of creativity, right? This podcast is, me just taking a combination of my little knowledge of how to create a podcast, my ability to jabber nonstop, and my affinity for this platform. Put them together, and bam, you got a podcast. Or the business I just started, Contender. Combine my experience with lawyers, my writing ability, and LinkedIn, and bam, there you go. You got a business. How creative. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna be doing some stuff on YouTube, but ultimately, Tanya, I really want LinkedIn not to go away. So we'll see. A related question from Mel Schmitz out of Germany. Hey, Mel, if you end up in jail, what escape method will you resort to? Mm, I like that one a lot. The problem here, I'm a big Shawshank fan. I would love to think I could pull off a Shawshank sort of plan where I'm just patient and I'm meticulous and I learn everything, and just bit by bit, pocket full of dirt, one by one, I execute on my plan until I get free and head to Mexico. But the reality is, when you get put in LinkedIn jail, I mean, you're just in the digital ether. As far as I can tell, trying to get a human being to talk to you is more or less impossible. The best you're going to get are bot like responses, which seems a little ironic given that you've most likely been suspended for bot like activity. So then you've got bots telling you to stop behaving like a bot when you're saying, I'm actually a human being, I'm not a bot. Um, but yeah, I don't know what I would do to get out. I don't think I could. Linky jail might be, um, yeah, it might be inescapable. Although I say that, and Sam Browne has gotten out like 6 times. So maybe I should ask him that question. Hmm. Um, Sajal Ahsan had a couple of good questions. Have you ever dealt with imposter syndrome looking at others on LinkedIn? This is such a huge uh, problem, issue, challenge. Let's say challenge for social media in general, right? Um, I would be lying if I said that I never got caught up in comparing. I will say it happens to me very rarely at this point. If I were trying to do this 5 years ago or 10 years ago, or God forbid, 15 years ago, as a 25-year-old, deeply insecure, high functioning alcoholic, all I would have been doing was comparing. But by the time I started doing this, um, I do. I think one of my big advantages on the platform is that I genuinely don't care what happens, um, and I don't mean that to be flippant. I mean, I I hope it's clear that I really care about the relationships I'm building. I really value the platform and like it's got all the things that it's bringing to nourish me and all these other people. I think it's truly phenomenal. Um, but the way I describe it is like the list of people whose opinions I really value in general when it comes to my life is a very short list. And my sister Christy, frankly, is like the only person. Um, no, I'd put Josh on that list and maybe one other person. But like that's it. Those are the only people. So it, everything else that is happening out there, it, to me, it's all for the good. Like if something goes well, awesome, and if it doesn't, okay. Like we'll try again. We learn what we can from it, and we'll try it again. And when I look and see somebody who's blowing up, where I mean, you take, I mean, there are a lot of people who are growing much faster than I am, and I think that's fantastic. I think one of the big things about growth is I think of it as what neighborhood you set up in. And that if you set up in the sales corner of LinkedIn, and I love the sales corner, I spend a lot of time there. Some of my best friends are sales corners in LinkedIn. Um, Look, if you just show up, you're in sales and you post consistently, you can get the 5,000 in like 2 months. I mean, it's fairly easy and fairly straightforward to do that, just because there are so many sellers and it is such a supportive community. So I mean, like again, I'm not saying this to knock on that corner. I'm saying that I think that that corner is, in my mind, it's representative of where I think other industries are going. I think that the sales corner of LinkedIn is one that like I look to when I think about what I want the lawyer corner of LinkedIn to look like 3 years from now. Um, but like in entrepreneurship and marketing and copywriting and tech, these are all these corners have so many conversations and so many people highly engaged on LinkedIn that if you're in one of those areas and you're posting stuff and you're getting good at the game, you can grow really fast. Whereas if you're doing something more esoteric, if you're, say, an editor posting about editing, well, that's a pretty small niche topic. Like if you're in gaming here, if you're in I mean, I've got a buddy, James Dice, who's in smart buildings, like, and you can still be really successful with what you're trying to do, but you're not going to grow in the same way because there simply aren't that many people looking at those particular topics. Um, that's a really long answer to the imposter syndrome question, but all that to say, I, I feel you. And I think of that as one of the manifestations of resistance from Stephen Pressfield's The War of Art. the force that pushes back on us whenever we try to do anything to improve ourselves or the world. The imposter syndrome is a huge one. Why me? Why should anybody listen to me? Why would anybody care what I have to say? The reality is, we're not entitled to anybody's attention. And I don't know, maybe people shouldn't listen to us. But the only way we're going to have a shot is by showing up consistently, putting one foot in front of the other, and starting to build a body of work. And it's by doing that that we start to put ourselves out there as somebody who's at least available to be listened to. That we're somebody who can be counted on to show up and have something to say. And then people can maybe take notice. And if they take notice, they may say, that's not for me. Or they may say, I like the cut of his jib. And they may come back tomorrow. But it's only by making that body of work and then, to be honest with you, adjusting. Like when things don't work, changing course. I talk about a post from a little more than a year ago that still only has 112 impressions and no comments, no reactions. I did not understand the game, and I posted something that just was never going to work. If I did it today, it'd still be terrible. It was just terrible content. It was in my niche. It was on creativity, but it was terrible content. And I think we just have to learn to show up and be humble enough. Maybe humble enough isn't the right word. I was saying detached enough from the results. Like if a piece of content doesn't do well, it's not because you suck. It's just because the content didn't work. It's fine. It doesn't matter. All it means is really nobody saw it. So no harm. Like find out what we can do differently so that we have a better shot at it working next time. That's a meandering answer to that question. Sajal's second question: how do you plan your content strategy for LinkedIn? I use a Trello board where I collect ideas and then I develop them through drafts. I don't do this for all. I would say I do this for like half my posts. Half of them do just kind of come into my head as ideas, and then I sort of noodle on them. I use the Notes app in iPhone, and like, I'm recording this on a Tuesday, and my posts from Friday, Monday, and today were all like this, where I had an idea. I kind of put the idea down in the Notes app, and the night before I kind of draft it, and then the morning of I cleaned it up, decide whether or not to put a photo, and then go with it. But yeah, so to me, the important thing is the finding a way to collect the ideas, because as you start creating more content, you do start to develop a lens for content. And once you have that lens of a content creator, you start seeing content wherever you look, right? And it's really valuable to have a way to readily capture those ideas and put them somewhere where they can then be developed into stuff to put out in the world. I've also been doing a lot more with video. And when it comes to video, I've been trying to do one a week for the last few months. And that tends to look like what I just described, where I have a video idea. Like right now, over the last couple of days, I've been noodling over a couple around curiosity, around where one that's going to be coming out one of these days is kind of this idea of what the value of following curiosity, and then another uh, about like, why people don't. And so I've got these two ideas, and I'm sort of thinking about them through the day and kind of jotting down ideas, almost sort of a script in the notes app, and then I'll record them on the iPhone. I have the iPhone 13 Pro, which has this killer camera. And then I'm typically doing my video editing in CapCut, which is a free app. And you can do auto captions. LinkedIn is now doing auto captions on videos, which is great. Whenever you post a video, and I think we're all going to want to be posting videos, that would be one huge tip for people. Start thinking more about doing videos. And I know it's a big ask for a lot of you, but that's where we're all going. But whenever you post a video, make sure there are captions. It just makes it more accessible. So it's just nicer to do. And it also just means more people are going to check it out, because a lot of people don't have sound on when they're looking at your video. So thank you for those questions. Anna Peng asks the most important of all questions. What's the secret to your immaculate beard? Oak City Beard Balm. Anna, right now I have the intoxicating scent of the Tobacco Villa, and I botched the dismount there. Tobacco Vanilla Beard Balm. It's really delightful. But other than that, it's just jeans. You know, like I remember being 13. I remember the first time, I think I was 13 or so. And I think I was in the 7th grade. And my dad saying, maybe we should go shave that thing off your lip. And my being like, oh, thank goodness. I was so self-conscious about it. But I was that guy like freshman year in high school who could sort of grow a beard, and just kind of being bigger and faster than the other guys in soccer. And then I sort of stopped growing in a way that we don't need to get into that, and how my soccer career ended in obscurity. It's fine. It's fine. But yeah, the beard kept growing. I did not intend to build a personal brand solely on facial hair. That just happened by accident. But yeah, that's about it. Let's see, what else do we have here? Nathan Hill. Hey Nathan, what would you tell somebody looking to use LinkedIn as a way to get a podcast going? Asking for a friend. The thing about podcasting, two things I'd say. One, you can keep it pretty simple. Like this one I'm using, this is like a $50 Yeti mic or Snowball mic, and Zoom. And like, I have an editor, but I mean, I'm actually editing this one myself, which is to say, I don't think I'm really going to edit it. I think I'm just going to let it rip. I think it'll be fine. But you can edit in Audacity or GarageBand, free programs that are really intuitive. And then we use Anchor FM for uploading it to the different podcast apps, and that's really intuitive. So it's really easy when it comes to the tech. You don't have to get really complicated about it. And I know you're a pretty tech savvy dude, so I'm sure you can handle that. The bigger thing is the reps. Um, I now have 2 podcasts that I'm involved in. And with both of them, my attitude is let's get to episode 50. That if we can get 50 episodes under our belts, we may have started to figure it out, like what the show is and how to do it well. Um, we also may have persuaded people that we're serious about what we're doing and that we're worth checking out. Um, I have I've had a couple other experiences with podcasts where one I made it 3 episodes and the other I think made it 6. And you're just not gonna succeed if you're wanting feedback or validation right off the bat. It's not a medium for that. So just be in it for the long haul. Start a podcast about something that you're willing to talk about all day, every day, whether or not you're getting paid for it, and go. Is This one's been interesting where I thought it was going to work is when I had the idea, something that a thought I had was this should already exist. And I felt pretty confident that because I'm a LinkedIn nerd who really likes talking about this stuff, that this podcast would appeal to, number one, other LinkedIn nerds, and that has proven pretty true. But then also people who are curious about trying to understand the platform better or to get more involved in it, and that's also proven true. And it's been really gratifying. The messages and the emails I'm getting on a weekly basis from people thanking me for the podcast, asking questions about it. Um, and in and why I say that I had some confidence that there would be at least some appetite for this. I remained surprised that it's working in the way that it is, because it is really hard to get people's attention in this world, right? Where we're all so strapped for time and attention. There are so many demands on us that I'm so grateful whenever anybody wants to spend any time listening to something I've done. Um, but I do think that it's that enthusiasm for the pursuit of the thing that gives your listener something to grab onto. Like if you're really into it, other people can get into it with you, right? That idea that interesting people are interested people, I think that applies here. So DM me if you got questions, Nathan. I'd be happy to riff on it. Mark Daniel, great question here. If you could ghostwrite for anyone, alive or dead, who would it be? And I thought about this. I wanted to come up with a really killer answer. I think my answer would be Richard Branson. And I for some reason, I feel like I'm punting on that one, or that's a cop out, or just sort of a good. But here would be my criteria. Number one, somebody who has a lot of insights or stories to share. Because as a ghostwriter, what you're trying to do is take somebody's stories basically and package them in a way that they'll move in the chosen medium. That's it. And that dude has so many. I mean, it'd just be so easy. There's so much stuff to work with there. And then the second piece of it is like somebody you would be happy to see succeed, or get more attention. And he does seem like a genuinely lovely fellow, doesn't he? He really does. But mainly it's that first thing where it's just there's also another aspect of this that I maybe underestimated before I got into it. But one thing I'm really liking about this deal is spending time with people who are successful in different ways and sort of getting the chance to unpack their psychology and their processes and understand what makes them tick. I find that process legitimately fascinating and educational. Uh, and obviously, Branson's a guy you can learn a lot from. So, great question, Mark. Let's see. Okay. Bill Murphy unleashed. Bill, thank you for all the great questions. How many hours a day are you on LinkedIn? Too many, Bill. I think it ends up averaging out to, I want to say 3, but I refuse to track it because, to be honest with you, I don't want to know. And while I tend to block maybe 45 minutes in the morning around the time I post, I'm like in and out all day long, just like commenting on this, commenting on that. So too much time, Bill. But to be honest with you, the number one thing for gaining traction is investment of time. It, there's, yeah, there's no substitute for putting in the time. Another question: what kind of prep do you do so you can keep posting? Are you reading books, articles about your subject matter, or other stuff? This goes back to what I was saying a bit ago, where as you post more, you develop a lens for content where you start to see content and everything you're doing. And again, it's just that process of capturing the ideas. That said, I am always reading and listening to stuff. This week I've pulled ideas from 2 different podcasts from Gary Vaynerchuk, a Gary Vaynerchuk book. I'm on a Gary V kick at the moment as I'm thinking about ramping up my own content production. I've pulled posts from a Seth Godin book I'm reading right now. I pulled a post from Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, awesome book about writing as well. So yeah, all the podcasts and the audiobooks and the books serve as fodder for content. You've often talked about how you didn't get active on LinkedIn until you stopped practicing law. Had you gotten active earlier, what would that have looked like? And would your focus still have been creativity or more legal related? This is a really good question. Knowing what I know now, say, like, if I were to plug back in to law firm life tomorrow, what I would post would be a lot different. It'd be different, and it would involve a more, not subject matter around the area of law I was working in, but the life of the lawyer. I would like quality of life, the future of law, tech, and in law firm settings, law firm culture. Like, I think I would want to be digging into that stuff in real time. So again, we have this idea that we need to be subject matter experts, sharing our subject matter expertise. And while that's all well and good, I think for content purposes, like point of view content is almost always going to be more interesting than subject matter content. It's just true. So being able to share your point of view is going to make your content go farther which is going to get you more attention, which is going to make it more likely that someone is interested in you as an expert. And then they can ask you what you know about your subject matter. That's my general take on it. Um, but in terms of like, if I had gotten started earlier, what would that have looked like? I have a hard time seeing how I would have gotten active on LinkedIn while I was still practicing law, because I really was, well, I was going to say gun shy, but more than that, I just did not see the value. I didn't see how it could matter or why I would want to do that. So I don't know what that would have looked like. Bill, I wish I had a better answer for that part. Um, Sort of related, do you censor yourself at all on the platform? Are there certain topics or opinions you don't feel comfortable sharing on here? Short answer is yes. I don't get into much in the way of politics here. Um, I am a fairly political person. I have a lot of political opinions. I consider myself fairly knowledgeable, uh, not just about the news of politics, but about the philosophy and um, what's in the books about politics. Um, but and there's that saying, "Would you rather be right or happy?" And too many of the political conversations are just people trying to be right against other people trying to be right, and nobody's convincing anybody, and people are just getting madder and madder. I'm not interested in that. It doesn't strike me as useful. It's certainly not fun. Um, you know, and yeah, there are other things like that. I mean, when we talk about personal branding, part of coming up with a brand is thinking about. I mean, we talk about content pillars, like the main buckets you pull your content from. I think about what I call vibe, like how you want people to feel when they engage with your stuff. And I also talk about your corner of the internet, who you want to be. You know, there's an infinite number of digital corners. You can choose one and own it. Um, and when you think about your branding in this way, um, you're focusing your attention on certain topics, on certain attitudes, on certain positioning in a way that's just naturally going to lead you in certain directions and naturally going to lead you not to talk about certain things or not to show. Like, I get angry. I mean, I don't get angry very much. I'm not really an angry person, but like I don't really show that on LinkedIn, and um, so it's an interesting uh, question, but because there's that ongoing thing about being authentic, right? And is it authentic to show parts of yourself and not other parts? And I think the answer is yeah, it can be. Like, and the things like this conversation I'm having right now, there are a ton of things I'm not talking about, but all the things I'm talking about are genuine. Like this is stuff I really think, right? So I think there's a lot of value in being clear on what you want to be known for, and being okay with the idea that we don't need to cover everything all the time. We don't need to share everything all the time. Privacy is sort of still alive, I think, and I think it's worth remembering that. But Bill, thank you for all those questions. That was really great. Um, we're almost to the end. This has been fun. But, Jon McCoy from the We Are for Good podcast, truly lovely fellow out of Oklahoma, asks, how do you juggle the tension of using LinkedIn to grow a side hustle while using the platform to grow the company you work for at the same time? This is a really good one. I think a misunderstanding a lot of us have is that our employer owns or has like a claim to our LinkedIn. I mean, really, there are different opinions on this, but why would your employer have any more claim to your LinkedIn than they do to your Facebook or your TikTok or your Twitter? They don't. They don't. Like, you can put where you work on your Facebook page. You can put where you work on your Instagram page, right? It's social media. And to be honest, this is part of the shift that's happening. And one of the things I'm helping move people along in their understanding of saying just about every company has been thinking about this the wrong way, where, and frankly, all the employees have been as well, because we've been learning from our companies that the way to think about LinkedIn content is that it comes through the company and then the employees share it. And that's not the way to do it. The way to do it is to share stuff through the individuals, and then get more attention for the company by building the personal brands of the employees. That's the way to effectively leverage this platform. And so, the side hustle thing, it, to me, it's certainly worthwhile, and I would say even important, to get buy-in from your manager, if not the company as a whole, if you do have a side hustle. But there are ways to do it where, like, depending on the type of side hustle, you could set up your LinkedIn page to really be focused on the side hustle, and that, like, your employer is actually, I mean, they're there, but they're kind of muted a little bit, and you're leaning into the side hustle hard. There's another way where it's actually the side hustle that's more muted, and you're building your side hustle through more outbound, through more reaching out to people than through kind of using your profile as a landing page to attract potential clients or buyers. And again, that kind of depends on what you're building. But when it comes to that that juggling act, when it comes to how to design your page, that's about what your type of side hustle is. But when it comes to how to feel with your employer, as with so many things in life, it comes down to communication. And if it turns out that you've got an employer who is not amenable to your building a side hustle, then frankly, you're going to have to make a decision, I think. And what's more important? Like starting to build that autonomy or that diversity in income streams and skills, or to stay on the current trajectory with that company. Um, I was fortunate with MMG that they were really supportive. That my manager, friend, CEO Josh, was supportive of my experimenting, and Franklin, pushed me off the cliff and actually taking a crack at it properly. I know a lot of people aren't in that position, but I will say it's a good position to be in. So, and I do think more and more companies are going to be going in that direction. I think more and more will be seeing the light on that stuff. So, great question, John. Thank you for that. My man Marcus Frick, do you have advice for somebody early 40-ish days, a la Jesus in the desert, in the daily posting journey? Keep going. Just keep going. I think it takes between 50 and 100 posts to really start to find your voice, to figure out who you are and what you're posting about out here. Don't worry about the engagement. I know that's easy to say, hard to do, but again, you have to have that body of work. Like, you have to get the reps to build the consistency muscle that's going to allow you to keep doing it over time, and to also start to get better. And Marcus, actually, you're somebody who say, like, if I go back 6 weeks ago to when you started, and those first posts you were putting out they were technically sound, they were, I would say, insightful, and they also could have been written by anybody. And that's a problem, because when you're writing content, if you want to stand out, you need to be able to be yourself. You need to be able to put out something that other people can't put out, right? And so, this is why I'm so big on point of view, right? That developing that lens where, like, I'm sharing with you my corner of the world, because I'm the only one who can give you that, right? And now the things I talk about with creativity or entrepreneurship or lawyers or how to do LinkedIn, well, other people can talk about that stuff all they want, but they're not going to be able to do it in the same way. And I'm not saying that's necessarily better or worse than how somebody else might do it, but it has the ability to stand out. And so, Marcus, when I look at what you're doing over the last 2 weeks, you're moving in the right direction, my man. Like, your stuff, you had a post about, what was it? How your bike trip to get supplies in Zambia was 70 kilometers round trip. And kind of some of the things you learned through that experience while in the Peace Corps. Who else is writing that stuff, my man? Nobody. Nobody else is writing that post. And here I am on a podcast talking about that post, because that post was remarkable. It was worth remarking on. And it was very specific to you. So keep going, keep developing your voice, and you're going to get where you're going. And I think that goes for anybody who's early on in the journey. Or frankly, even if you're not that early, but it's not working the way you want it to, like, are you putting out stuff that's only you? Or are you focusing on, book learning and salesy stuff? Because if you're doing that stuff that doesn't show you as a human being, I was going to say you're missing the plot, but you're most certainly missing the opportunity. So, Marcus, thank you for that question. That's awesome. I got two more. I was hoping to get this done in an hour. I didn't do it. One more sip from Tasha Van Vlack. Hey, Tasha. Uh, how do you balance fatherhood with your entrepreneurial work? So I'm 2 months in to running Contender, and actually it's been really relaxing, relatively speaking. The stakes are higher, but we've been ramping up a little bit, in a way that I haven't had a full boatload of client work yet. That's going to start. We're onboarding 2 more law firms in January. So, like, things are going to get a lot more adventurous. But um, it's been a really interesting shift where by starting my own company, having a very clear idea of where we're going and how we're going to get there, and frankly, falling ass backward into this opportunity where I'm fortunately positioned to provide a very specific service to a very specific client set. Um, like I'm able to look at the field, like look at my calendar, look at my weeks, and kind of organize them in a way where I can protect my time for spending time with the kids, or so that my wife can go do yoga or go to the gym, um, and say, okay, like you just need to get this stuff done. But like nobody else is putting meetings on my calendar, right? So I'm able to leave Tuesdays open for writing. And that's what I'm doing. I'm not taking meetings on Tuesdays. I'm just writing on Tuesdays. Um, like I'm only taking meetings on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in this like 3 hour window. Yeah, and by like time blocking a bunch of stuff like that, I'm finding that it's actually been great that like I don't the not having other people um like having the same claim on my time for the first time in my life. I should say my working life has been really interesting and really liberating in a way that, let's say, I hope works. and, and Tasha, ask me again in 3 months. My opinion on that question may be very different. Maybe screaming into the void at that point. All right, that brings us to our last question from Josh Etress. And Josh, I was wondering whether to put this one first or last, but biggest life lessons of last year, question mark. And there were three that came to mind. So as I mentioned, I put my first book into the world, in the creative arena, released it on my 40th birthday. And one of the lessons was I should have done that sooner. Like ship the work, like ship it before it's ready, ship it before it's perfect, ship it before you feel qualified to ship it. It's like put in the time, make the thing, and put it out in the world where it can have an impact, or even have a chance to have an impact, or not. Either way, it's a learning experience, and it moves you forward on the path to wherever the hell it is you're going. But you got to make this stuff and you got to move it. And this year was a huge uh, teacher in that respect for me in this year, where I did start 2 podcasts, and I mean technically I guess I started 3 businesses, and you know put a book out in the world, and yeah, just kind of had so many different things going on. Um, Another thing I learned, um, so I'm still not diagnosed with ADHD, but at this point I'm almost 100% sure that ADHD is something I've been dealing with since I was about 13 years old. And it was only after getting out of the law in, uh, in last October, and then starting this new role with MMG in December, that I started noticing these problems where in my last fiscal year as an attorney, I billed 2,156 hours. And when I started working at MMG, and I was working at home, and I was the first person ever dedicated full time to business development and sales. And so I was responsible for building out systems and processes and um, kind of blazing a lot of new ground. And I started struggling with just not being as productive as I thought I should have been. And I didn't understand why. And I had a couple of different people, Jackie McCullough being the biggest one for me, who encouraged me to consider the possibility that I'm neurodivergent, that that ADHD might be part of my makeup, part of how I'm wired. And I'd never really considered it and I never looked into it. And then in January, I did look into it, and it took about 6 minutes for me to say, "Oh, okay, no, yeah, this is me." And that realization has been it's been really valuable. I I knew I had never really liked school. I'd never been as good at school as I apparently should have been. Uh, And I mean, to be honest with you, I just sort of thought it was because I wasn't a dickhead. Um, and maybe I was. I mean, I think it definitely was to some degree. But one thing this has taught me is that there was some other stuff going on that that I don't learn very well through being talked to. Um, like I learn through books. Like reading is how I learn best. And I need a lot of structure in terms of, now I'm using a ton of timers and time blocking and to-do lists and prioritizing. And like I mentioned, using the Trello board, relying on that heavily, and the Notes app, and just having these different tools to kind of keep my head more organized. I'm also delegating a lot more, um, and like relying on other people to do stuff in a way that can leave some of my oh, executive function, which is a term that I learned this year. Trying to leave more of that available, um, because I mean, I find frankly, I get sort of bogged down in life admin stuff. And I never knew what that was about. I just knew that it was a thing that I would just like let things drag out, um, instead of just dealing with them. And I now see that that's there where I have a tendency to just focus on what I want to focus on and then just like stay there and let other stuff slide. Um, but then at the same time, I'm super distractible. So, all that to say, learning more about neurodivergence and what that looks like for people has been a really big learning this year. And then I maybe the biggest of the year is just build a personal brand. I had never built a personal brand before 2022, and you know, it's not an exaggeration to say it has changed my life. In less than a year, that my life today looks very different than it did in certain respects. And that's like all due to having started to build a personal brand. You know, with LinkedIn being my medium of choice. And I think that's something more and more people are going to be doing in the coming years. It's going to go mainstream, this idea of building a personal brand. And I know that for me, one of the obstacles to doing it was sort of wanting it to already exist. And you got to go back to the lesson that we're talking about building it, that you're starting from foundations, right? You're starting from the ground, and you're able to create and build that brand. Not quite however you want, but there are different ways you can go with it. And there's tremendous power in doing it. I wouldn't be doing this podcast. I wouldn't have started this business. I wouldn't have made some of the amazing friends I've made. I wouldn't have the group of folks who come out and support the stuff I write about and talk about, or the people I'm able to run around and contribute to their stuff. All of it is related to personal branding. And the thing is, once you start doing it, the opportunities can start to present themselves. And they're opportunities that, at least for me, are things that I never could have seen coming before I started doing it. I just wouldn't have been able to see the field and have any idea of what was coming. It's only by doing the thing that those opportunities have the opportunity. Oh boy, it's getting late. It's 11:45 here on the East Coast, but yeah, it's only by doing the thing that the opportunities can present themselves. There's an Antonio Machado poem that also gave my sister the title of her first book, and the poem is Caminante no hay camino. Pathfinder, there is no path. You make the path by walking. And that goes for a lot. I think that's true in pursuing a creative life, and I think that's true in building a personal brand. That you make the thing, and as you're doing it, you start to see the world a little differently. And we are moving toward a world, where as the industrial age continues to give way to whatever it is we're living in now, called the connection age, the internet age, our economy is going to continue changing in some really dramatic ways. And you can count me among the converted that having a personal brand is going to be mission critical in the new economy. That we're gonna want to have them, and frankly, that the way the AI contributions are evolving as rapidly as they are is reinforcing and is really forcing my hand on this question. It has me thinking in overdrive on this stuff. I think the AIs are going to have a hard time actually being people and actually having personal brands in a way that will still have some advantages for connecting with people, and particularly for live stuff. There's a lot to be excited about there. But yeah, so build a personal brand, folks. I think that's enough out of me. Goodness gracious, this was a marathon session. I just, I think I just jabbered for 90 minutes straight by myself. I don't know whether to be proud or ashamed. I also don't actually expect that anybody is listening to this. If you have made it this far and you want to just drop me a DM saying, Tony, I made it that far, you would make my day. Like that genuinely would make my day. But all right, next week we'll be back with uh, a more conventional episode of In Linky Land. Um, the show notes for this one includes a link to the LinkedIn profiles of each and every person who was gracious enough to offer up a question. So feel free to connect and or follow with those folks. Um, and thank you for for joining me on this first attempt at an Ask Me Anything. Depending on how this one goes, maybe we'll try it again sometime. Until next time, I'll see you out there in Linky Land. Peace.